Clones are useful not only when building games, but also when developing animations. Let's have a look at the following example that we've adapted from the Scratch website. Every time the spacebar is pressed, several fireworks will shoot up into the sky and explode. How can we build this? Let's consider the interface first. It will be night, and fireworks will start off as little dots, which then explode like stars. Let's create this in Scratch.
We'll first draw a backdrop that looks like the sky during the night. We'll paint it black and put little white dots for the stars. We'll then delete the cat and create a new sprite for the fireworks, which we'll draw ourselves. We'll create several costumes which will be used to simulate the behavior of the fireworks. We'll first have a costume that looks like a dot, which is of a different color to that of the sky. I'll go for red. Then we'll draw another 3 costumes where the firework is bigger and looks a bit like a star. These can be used after the firework explosion. We'll make sure that the dot costume is first, followed by the rest, and we'll give representative names to each one. Our interface is ready.
Now let's design our program. When the spacebar is pressed, a random number of fireworks will be created, say between 1 and 10. How could we implement the Create a Firework in Scratch? Instead of creating separate sprites for each firework, we should create clones. This way, we could easily deal with the program requirement for a random number of fireworks while reusing our code. Now let's translate this pseudocode in Scratch code.
We'll first introduce a when spacebar press block, followed by a repeat block, setting the number of times to be random, between 3 and 10. Inside this loop, we'll put a block for creating a firework clone and waiting for 1 second. This way, the fireworks are more realistic. As we discussed in an earlier example, we should hide the actual sprite of the firework and introduce a show block for each clone.
Now let's have a look at what happens when a firework clone is created. There are 2 main things happening. The firework will shoot up into the sky and then it will explode. The rocketing procedure involves the initialization of the firework. In other words, specifying that it looks like a dot, setting its color, and placing it in the center of the stage. After that, the firework will start to ascend. In order to make it move upwards, we need to set its direction accordingly beforehand. When it explodes, it will have the shape of a star, and it will start falling towards the ground, while at the same time getting smaller and having some visual effects. Eventually, the clone will be deleted. Okay, now that we have a better idea about the fireworks behavior, we'll go ahead and code it.
We'll first define the high-level behavior of our program. We'll create the new blocks for rocket and explode, which we'll define in a bit. Good. Now let's specify what our 2 procedures do. Following our pseudocode for rocket, we have switch costume to dot, set color effect to a random color, go to the center, and point upwards. In order to have each firework point to slightly different directions upwards, we'll set the direction to a random number between -40 and 40. To make the fireworks skyrocket in a realistic way and different from each other, we'll also put a move block and a wait block inside a repeat block, setting the number of repeats to be random, say between 5 and 30. This way, the fireworks will shoot up at different heights. We'll also need to add a show block at the beginning of this procedure, as the actual fireworks sprite is hidden. Now let's implement the explode procedure. According to our pseudocode, exploding involves first switching to one of the explode costumes, so we'll set this to be randomly chosen. Then we'll introduce a block for pointing downwards, and a repeat until block, setting its condition to size smaller than 5. Until this condition is met, we'll be changing the pixelate effect and the ghost effect, as well as the clone's size. Inside this loop, we'll also specify that the clone moves a few steps and waits for a short time, so as to make its movement more convincing. Once the firework clone becomes smaller than the specified size, we'll delete it. Let's try it out. Very nice! We have several fireworks with different colors and explosion effects.
Now, what if we wanted to make the fireworks move faster when rocketing? How could we implement this? All we would need to do would be to change the number of steps to move within the rocket. Note that by simply changing this value once in our script, we would have all fireworks move faster. That's quite handy, right? But if instead of clones we had separate sprites for each firework, we would need to go to the code for each sprite and change the corresponding value there. This would be a big problem if we had a large number of fireworks. The use of clones makes our programs more flexible and hence easier to change. Just like with procedures, we can make the changes we want at a single location and affect all clones created. We invite you now to create different extensions of this animation, for instance, to include sounds or additional visual effects, and to see for yourself how flexible this program is.